Previously on Balls.
Glenn, this is Neal Collins on Bollocks
Neal?
Balls Radio. You've had an exciting couple of weeks, haven't you, Glenn?
Yeah, non-stop. The roller coaster continues.
Absolutely, mate. I mean, as football journalists, we talk to agents, we deal with them. That they get. I think you guys get an unfairly hard time sometimes on Twitter and on Facebook, and we kind of jumble ourselves up in all these stories. But Glenn, can you just very briefly take me through your version of what's been happening with Killer Mpela? Signed a contract. He's the high-paid Sundowns player that signed a pre-contract with Kaizer Chiefs. What's your take on what's happened over the last week with that deal?
Well, the reality of the situation is at the beginning of January, he agreed a deal to move to Kaizer Chiefs in what is effectively referred to as a pre-contract, whereby from the 1st of July 2014 he'll be a Kaizer Chiefs player.
Yes.
So that is the exact situation as it stands at the moment. Sundowns went last week to Zambia, and the player did not attend training for, I believe it was 2 days, which I certainly don't believe was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And he has subsequently gone back to training. But at no stage did I ever tell him to stay away from training or to stay away from the club. And if people are intelligent on the situation, I have the best interests of the player at heart, in which case the player should be at training, because that's going to be the only possibility for him to be able to leave the club. Because at the end of the day, Sundowns hold the fate of the player for the next 6 months. Whether we like it or not, that's the reality of the situation. The player has a contract which he needs to honour at Mamelodi Sundowns until the 30th of June 2014.
Yeah, exactly, mate. I mean, the minute that a player doesn't turn up, when he signed a pre-contract and he doesn't turn up for training, people tend to blame the agent and suggest that the agent's trying to push the move through quicker than it should be. He's got another 6 months to spend at Msandawana, who've looked after him nicely through his operations and all that kind of thing, in terms of, keeping him at the club. And I know he hasn't had enough game time.
The relative situation, he is contracted to them for the next 6 months. So ultimately they'll decide what his future lies, i.e. whether it lies at the club or at another club. And they're not going to bow to any pressure from anybody. So that's why it was silly of the player to do that. But I think the player was very upset, very desperate at the time. He claims that he wasn't to be part of the Zambia squad anyway. But at the end of the day, that's water under the bridge. The player's now back at training and has to honour his contract at the moment until such time as something else arises.
Yeah, I mean, what interests me, if we take it on from there, and I know we don't like to delve into speculation and unattributed quotes, but a couple of the football websites yesterday were carrying quotes from Sundowns, an unnamed official at Sundowns in Zambia, saying that Mpela is no longer part of the squad, he has no chance of getting back in the team, and there's a very good chance he'll be leaving before the end of the transfer window. I don't see how that can happen without some money changing hands.
Yeah, I mean, I think there'd be a lot of interest from clubs. Obviously, the most natural and most sensible situation would be for him to go to Kaizer Chiefs, because he's going to be a Kaizer Chiefs player from the 1st of July anyway. And that would make sense, and obviously was something that we would like, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be what we would like. So if Sundowns aren't going to keep him, then second best price would be for them to loan him to another club where he gets regular competitive football. But it's a club. It's obviously going to have to be a situation where Mpela would want to go to their club. So it's no use them trying to push him to a club that just necessarily suits them. At the end of the day, the player has to agree to it as well. And the player knows the repercussions if he does stay at the club. But that'll be a decision that he'll take at the end of the day. As an agent, I can only advise my clients as to what to do. The ultimate decisions are taken by them.
Yeah. So what we're saying is, let's just get this in a nutshell for the guys on Twitter that constantly go on about Mpela's disappeared, Mpela should be doing this, get him to Kaizer Chiefs. The only solution now is if Msandawana don't want him, if Sundowns don't want Killer Mpela at their club, South Africa's current top scorer in terms of active players, then surely they have to loan him out to another club to keep him fit to the end of the season. And if that's Kaizer Chiefs, then that would be great. If it's not, then the player has to agree. What do you think will happen?
I'm not too sure, to be honest. Unfortunately, we don't have control over the situation. So I'm not quite sure. I just hope the common sense prevails. And as I say, if it's not that he's going to be allowed to go to Kaizer Chiefs, because I know Kaizer Chiefs have engaged in discussions with the club. I mean, it's quite surprising that 3 or 4 different officials from Mamelodi Sundowns are saying different things on that matter. Some are saying Chiefs haven't engaged. Some of them are saying Chiefs have engaged. Some of them are saying that they won't allow the player to go to Chiefs. I think somebody needs to take responsibility and ultimately make decisions on that situation. You can't have 4 different people at the same club all talking about different things. At the end of the day, I respect the decision that the club will take on this matter, and the player will have to respect the decision that the club will take on this matter. Kaizer Chiefs have engaged with the Mamelodi Sundowns with a view to taking the player from January, but that decision will be up to Mamelodi Sundowns. If Sundowns don't accept an offer for the player to go to Kaizer Chiefs, then two other options exist. Either the player stays at Sundowns and hopefully he's integrated into their squad for the next 6 months, or the player will be allowed to go on loan elsewhere in terms of a deal which both the club and the player would have to agree to.
Okay, Glenn, I'm going to have a little rant here. My dealings with Sundowns have been appalling. Pitso phones me, says he wants to come on. I can't find anyone to give him permission. They appear to have a raft of people, some of them now no longer with the club, who deal with transfers, who deal with agents, who deal with players. They've got all this money. They've got one of the richest men in Africa behind their club, and yet we constantly come to this situation where I've got you saying to me that you're not sure if Sundowns are in contact with Kaizer Chiefs. If they're trying to drive through a bargain with Kaizer Chiefs, to try and get him to the club. If they don't want him, why not get him to Chiefs now? It will save them on their wages. There was the ridiculous to and fro about his salary. How do we sort out a club like Sundowns?
On that salary issue, I'd like to clarify something. At no stage would I ever disclose what my clients are earning. And that was clear. If you look at the article itself in the Sunday Times, at no stage does the journalist concerned ever say that I had indicated that the player was earning a certain level of money. And I contacted the journalist subsequent to the article because I thought maybe I had something. The journalist said no. He said he had requested for me to tell him what the player was on, and I told him, I made it very clear to him that the client confidentiality is key to my business and key to my relationship with my clients. And at no stage would I ever disclose what the player was on. So there was speculation in the Sunday Times, and based on a speculative article in the Sunday Times, Mamelodi Sundowns then see fit to go and have a rant about me and the way I conduct business and the way I conduct my relationship with them. It's about time that they start pointing fingers at everybody else and actually start taking a look at themselves on a number of facets. The Katlego Mpela situation could have been dealt with a lot better if they'd actually listened to people and didn't have their own agendas. The George Maluleka situation, they're upset and bitter about the fact that George Maluleka didn't join the club. That was a decision taken by the player. At no stage did I ever push George Maluleka to Kaizer Chiefs. In fact, if you ask George Maluleka, he will tell you clearly that I gave him both options. And him and his family sat together with both options and decided on going to Kaizer Chiefs. But if Sundowns had acted quicker on that situation, there was a good chance that they would have got George Maluleka. But it's easy to bash Glenn Binkin in the media because, we have to start looking at somebody else. But it's not time that they start taking a look at themselves and stop pointing fingers at everybody else.
Okay. Let's get back to football. Is Killer Mpela fit? Someone told me that he's lost a bit of weight and that he's looking good again. He had a bad knee injury operation. Is he back?
Yeah, I saw him the other day. He's in very good shape. He is training. He hasn't gone with the team to Sundowns, but he's training with one of the coaches, and he told me he's working really hard, and I believe him. And he's got every motivation to do so because at the end of the day, Killer wants to get back to doing what he does best, and that's score goals. And hopefully he's going to get the opportunity in the next 6 months, be it at Kaizer Chiefs or Mamelodi Sundowns or any other club. And then from the 1st of July, he's obviously focused on trying to help Kaizer Chiefs. But up until then, he's certainly focused on helping Mamelodi Sundowns.
Well, mate, you can't say fairer than that. I'm so glad that you made a little bit of time for us this morning to explain to our listeners. We'll put this out on our video and on YouTube so people can see you saying exactly what's going on rather than everyone quoting you and throwing around what they think you're saying and what you think you're doing. Glenn Binkin, thanks for talking to us.
Neil, thank you very much.
Glenn, before you go.
Yeah.
This is unfair. What will happen to Majuro? Any ideas? I know he's not your man. I know he's Tim Sakazi's man.
Yeah,
any ideas? Any rumours that you can give us?
The speculation is that he will go on loan to another club. And there again, that's the relative situation. If he's not going to be playing for Kaizer Chiefs, I'm sure that they're quite happy for him to be playing elsewhere. I think there's a lot of interest for them to take the player. And I think in that situation, as I do hope in the Katlego Mpela situation, the common sense will prevail and the player will be allowed to continue his career elsewhere. The reality is he's not going to be a Kaizer Chiefs player in 6 months' time. It doesn't make sense keeping him there or trying to force him to play. It's a very different situation to the Robert Lewandowski situation. Lewandowski is a Borussia Dortmund player who signed a pre-contract with Bayern Munich.
Yes.
Lewandowski plays every single week for Borussia Dortmund. He's the best player at that club. He scores goals. He's cup-tied. He's playing in the Champions League. So it makes sense that he's going to be staying there. And like in the Katlego Mpela situation or Majuro situation, neither of those two players feature regularly for the clubs. So why would the clubs keep the players from going elsewhere? If it's clear that the players are going to be moving on the 1st of July anyway. So hopefully common sense prevails, but that's up to the clubs to.
Brilliant, mate. I think the message from Glenn Binkin today, guys, is let common sense prevail. Let's talk. let's open the right channels and not have 6 or 7 different channels at each club. That's what interests me. Thank you, Glyn. As always, mate. Great stuff.
Thanks, Neil.
Cheers, Glyn.
Bye.
Well, that comfort, I mean, that's interesting. I love it when we can throw it to a foreign situation. Robert Lewandowski has signed a pre-contract to go to Bayern, right, from Dortmund. But he plays every week. He gets the vital goals. Kylian Pella and Leonolo Majoro aren't playing for their clubs. They've been marooned on the sidelines, and they're being expected to sit around for 6 months before they go to their new clubs, which I believe, with Majoro, by the way, will definitely be Orlando Pirates. But a lot of people are denying that. Even Floyd's denied it, but I heard there was a call. Let's see what happens. Nice to speak to Glyn Binkin. Great that he made time for us.
Visual radio. Radio like you've never seen it before. Balls.co.za